I got a few things I want. Let me turn Echo off really quickly. I'm sorry. I got a few things I want to say about this. I'm so sick of seeing the Jonathan Frakes quote about Star Trek Discovery. But before I get into this Star Trek Discovery thing, I just want to say, listen, if you don't like something, don't beat people down over it that you don't like it and whatever, it sucks and whatever. Whatever. You get the point. The bottom line is I want to say this. I'm 39 years old, and I grew up with Star Trek. And Star Trek TNG first aired when I was about 4 years old, and I grew up watching with my parents, and I really loved watching it with my father, and we really had quite a bond watching Star Trek. And I love Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's my favorite show of all time, and I legit go to bed to it almost every night, still to this day. And I cannot thank Terry Matalas enough for making that great season 3 of Picard. Oh my God, what a blessing for all of us. It was so beautiful and amazing. Picard season 1 and 2, though, were trash. Now, here's the thing about Jonathan Frakes. I love Jonathan Frakes. Like, this guy is like a hero to me in so many different ways, right? Like, legit. I would, and being able to talk to Terry Matalas and some of the people on this past Star Trek, I don't want to say this because I really love and respect Frakes so much. I love Riker, and I love all the Star Trek people. I really do. But this quote keeps coming up from Jonathan Frakes that's driving me nuts. I can't stand hearing it anymore, but I understand from his perspective. He's involved in Star Trek. He's directing all of Star Trek. He's involved in all of it. Star Trek Discovery is so not Star Trek, it's unbelievable. The show itself is fine and whatever if it was his own show, but it's just not really, it's really bad. Like, I'm sorry, like, unless you're a new fan or something. But Jonathan Frakes keeps saying they hated us too. They hated The Next Generation too. No, they didn't. They hated it at the beginning. At the beginning, there was press that hated it. But Star Trek The Next Generation started with a huge expectation, got crapped on by critics, and it started to flow this way, and then it blew up and got huge. In season 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, it went off the air at its highest level, at the highest Star Trek ever was. Star Trek The Next Generation is one of the most successful TV shows of all time, and it's the most successful Star Trek show of all time. The Next Generation. It gained viewership, okay? Star Trek Discovery continues to be terrible and terrible and terrible. So they hated us too. It's not a good quote anymore. It was fine for the first 2 weeks of the show, and it might have been fine for the first season, but there's too much lore change, cringy way of talking, not Star Trek enough stuff, and people just don't know Star Trek working on Star Trek. However, Jonathan Frakes is an amazing director. I absolutely love him. I love that Jonathan Frakes, who I always loved him as an actor. I never understood. Some people would make these jokes about him, like his acting or something. What the hell are you talking about? This guy's acting I thought was always great. I 100% always believed him as this character. He was a strong figure and a strong character, as all the characters on the show were. It's not like nowadays where we want to make a mega strong female, so we make all the males idiots. That's not what they did back then. Back then they made everyone strong. Beverly Crusher. I mean, you could argue about Deanna. Deanna had one of the best arcs, too. She started off like, I'm an empath, and I really don't know the ship and stuff. But by the end of Star Trek, she became like, she gained the higher rank, started wearing the uniform. She really grew as a character and became more of a Starfleet officer than an empath, and it was very interesting. But anyway, the bottom line is Star Trek Discovery, absolutely no. It's not the same thing. Frakes can keep saying that all he wants. It's not true. But I understand he's the director of it. He's in charge of all of it. What's he going to say? It's terrible, or it's not so good, or it's okay? He's not going to say that. The writing is not very good. The writing is not, it's just not good. It might be good for some weird sci-fi show somewhere, but it's not good for Star Trek. It really doesn't come off right. It does. It doesn't. And if it did, they'd be destroying right now. The ratings would be off the charts. They would just be absolutely crushing it all everywhere. Discovery would have 7 seasons, 8 seasons, 10 seasons because they're only doing 10 episodes a season. It's the shortest ever Star Trek, I think, that's ever been put out, 70 episodes or 68 or something like that. It's below every other Star Trek that's ever happened. It's not good. It's just not good. Visually, it's amazing. Visually, it looks really good. Production-wise, it's really good. Directorial wise, it's really good. Some of the writing is pretty cool. The actors and actresses are great for the most part. But the writing, the stories, and the trek is off majorly. And if you want to get pissed off at that and be angry, then fine, you can be angry all you want. However, some people do like it, and for some people it is a great show. And if you're those people, I'm jealous of you. I'm super jealous of you. That's awesome that you're able to like it. That is amazing to me. Some people, I love peas, and I love Brussels sprouts, and I love asparagus, and my wife doesn't like any of those. You know what I mean? And I'm sure there are some people that wish they could eat more foods like that are good. And by the way, I don't eat great. I eat crap. But, I mean, I'm just saying I also like those things. And so, cool, good for me. Tastes like crap to most people. I like it. Whatever. It's different stuff for everybody. So I'm not crapping on the people that like Discovery and that think it's great and whatever. I could give you so many reasons why I don't like it, valid reasons. It's not just hating. It's an actual reason. Not to mention the ratings, the reviews, the audience score, all that stuff. It's not very good. But you might like it, and if you do, that's good for you. But it's a shrunken audience. And Star Trek The Next Generation was literally one of the best shows ever. And at first, the critics didn't like it, and some of the old school TOS older people didn't like it either. And I can sort of understand that, too, because it was a little bit different than the original series. But here's the difference. It took place in the future. And so because it took place in the future, it was 100 years later or whatever, and things were even more evolved by then. And it was a little bit more, like, I would say boring-ish, right? Like in TOS, there was a little bit more of a Wild West gung-ho style still. And that's, because, a lot of the writers and people were a lot more conservative and from the 50s, even if they were liberal. You know what I mean? So they had that more, style. And you see that style still in the first and second season a little bit of Star Trek The Next Generation. I mean, some of the writing and dialogue is downright from the 40s and 50s because some of the writers were 60 and 70 years old. And they grew up in the 40s and 50s. And they're writing Star Trek The Next Generation. But it wasn't until the third and fourth season that you saw the lingo and some of the certain writing start to kind of change and some of the dialogues. But I can write that away in my headcanon because sometimes the specific language you can kind of just you understand what they're trying to say, even if the way they're saying it's kind of weird. And so that's what you can do a little bit with Star Trek Discovery too. But yum yum and some of the other swears and comments and things, it takes me out of it completely. And honestly, the first season of The Next Generation and the second season of The Next Generation, there's some language that takes me out of it too. Like when Picard, in one of the best episodes ever, Measure of a Man, when Picard says to Data, when Picard says to the judge, woman, love interest, Captain Filippi, I forget her name, Filippo, I don't know, Fallopian tube, I'm not sure. But he says to her, he goes, if all these people went around right now, you know what I'd like to do to you? And she's like, bash me in the head with a chair. And he's like, after that, or whatever. And it's just and then she goes, ain't love grand? And then they cut away. It's such a cheesy 50s thing. Even in the 80s, it was a little bit weird. But even the 80s, you still had some of that lingo because a lot of people in the 80s were writing. They were, born in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. They're 40-year-olds writing in the 80s. And so if all these people went around, you know what I'd like to do to you right now? Bash me off the head with a chair? After that. Ain't love grand? What a weird, the language is so bizarre from back in the day that when I used to watch that episode, it would take me out of it a little bit, especially in the 2000s. Probably in the 90s and the 80s, it still fit, but in the 2000s when I would go back and watch TNG, that always kind of took me out of it. Just like some of the lingo that you hear in Discovery and maybe Strange New Worlds even. Although Strange New Worlds is a little bit better than Discovery, but although Strange New Worlds now is terrible as well in some ways. But Strange New Worlds, I'll give Strange New Worlds this. There's a different version of the audience that's liking it. So that's good for Strange New Worlds, but I find myself enraged at Strange New Worlds because Spock acts completely different and wrong. I don't even want to get into it. Whatever, man. It's going to make me sad and angry, so I'm not even going to bother. But the bottom line is I love Frakes, but this quote about they hated us too on TNG. No, they didn't, and you were one of the best shows ever. With it by the 3rd, 4th, and 5th season, you were crushing it and winning awards by the 7th season. It was unbelievable. Discovery has gone down. TNG went up. So, yeah, they hated you at first. But once the show found itself, they loved it, and they loved you, and I just got an alert. So I just wanted to rant about that because I can't stand seeing that quote anymore. It's driving me nuts. But at the same time, man, how about Frakes in Star Trek Picard Season 3? He crushed it. As a fucking director, as an actor, sorry that I swore. I don't swear a lot on this channel, but god damn it, do I love Frakes. So imagine if he saw this and he got mad at me and blocked me or something. You know, that would be like I might off myself. So I just don't want to be careful. You know, I love Frakes. I just don't agree because the show, it's the writing, it's the stories, it's not good. But they put a lot of work into it, and I appreciate that, and I love the effort for it, but it's hurting Star Trek. Picard Season 1 and 2 were not good, and they hurt a lot. And Picard Season 3 was amazing. Please, for the love of God, hire Terry Matalas. He knows Star Trek better than the Star Trek actors. I don't care what Terry Matalas says. They know their characters. I don't think so. They might know their characters pretty well because they are their characters, and God, I love them all. I love them all. They're like, when my life was down, when my father died and missed Season 7. Never saw the end of Star Trek The Next Generation with me. He died when I was 8. And this show was still there for me, and I continue to watch it. This show is super important to me, and I love it. And my wife loves it, and I didn't even know she liked it when I met her. It wasn't until about a year into knowing my wife that we realized we both love Star Trek this much, and we'll always watch Star Trek together. This is huge for me. It means a lot to me. But I'm not going to go crazy and whatever. I've already given up that they don't know Star Trek anymore. The only people that know Star Trek, you're never going to get it perfect for everybody. It's never going to be perfect for everybody. There's always going to be some neckbeard in the basement that's angry about something. Fine. But try to be closer to it. Try. And it doesn't feel good. But thank God for Picard Season 3. I'm going to go watch that again because it is the best interpretation of Star Trek since Enterprise. I'm out of here. Star Trek Late Night. Thanks for checking me out, guys. And it's been a while. Good to hear from everybody who's in the comments. I'm sure I'll read them all. And thank you so much for still being here. And I hope to do more if you want me to. All right, I'll see you guys.